Traveling through the forest was somewhat time-consuming. Considering the amount of stamina that Celine and Lithia had, the group wasn't able to move at a very fast pace. Han checked the map and saw that they had only traveled a fifth of the total distance. At the current pace, they would be cutting things close for reaching the ruins before nightfall. Periodically, they would need to rest and allow the sisters to regain their strength. Oddly, they had yet to run into any monsters in this forest, which he thought to be odd. Han would look around to see if any indicators were letting him know that intruders were heading towards them. Since Haiyun was so adamant about them being vigilant in this forest, Han figured that seeing monsters would be a relatively regular event. Do you think we can take another break? Celine gasped and collapsed on her back on top of a boulder. Sweat was dripping down her face, which was beet red from the exhaustion. Sighing, Han looked back at her and said, "We need to maintain this pace if we want to reach the ruins on time. I do not think you want to spend the night in this forest with just the four of us." Though he sounded harsh, Han understood that this was probably a lot of work for them. Unless the student came from a background that prepared for this amount of exertion, the average commoner would have a difficult time. "I'm sorry, E, but we never thought we would be going into this field so quickly after getting accepted into academy. The area that we lived in was mainly flat terrain, and the monsters came to us, so we didn't need to run around so much. I can't believe such a force exists with all these cliffs and uneven terrain," Celine said with frustration. This was something he found to be unusual, considering the experience levels of many of the students. Why would the academy purposely make these students go through such a rough training experience? At least many of the students had already received some combat training from family members or militia groups. Listening to the sisters, Han learned that many of the villagers didn't have the benefits of having protection close by. With the looming threat of monsters and demons, many had to create their own militia to fight off the attacks. This was even more so when it came to an event called the Overflow. For some reason, monster and demon activity would increase by several magnitudes. No one knew the cause of this event, though there were many theories. With the overflow, villagers needed to set themselves up to protect themselves, because the main military force would be used to protect cities and large towns. With him being frustrated at how relatively quiet this force was, a part of him wanted to figure out where all the monsters were. "Did the other teams already take care of them?" he said under his breath. If we were going to find out what was happening, it would probably be beneficial to have either Anacalus or Horacia with him. Looking over at the sisters, Han said, "I will be going a little ways away to make sure that there are no monsters nearby." Seeing the sisters' eyes widen in fright, he said, "Brittany will be here with you, so you do not need to worry." After seeing them relax, he nodded to Brittany and walked away from where they stopped. Once he was far enough away so as not to see the sisters and where they were at, he leaned against a tree and said out his thoughts. "Jungle sisters, your master calls for you." From the ground, two shapes seemed to grow from below. The two masses of plant life slowly formed into Anacalus and Elasia. Once they completed their transfer, the sisters bowed in front of Han. Both of them were as stunning as when he first created them, combining both beauty and savagery. "Master, we are honored that you would summon us," both of them intoned. "I have missed you, sisters. Seeing both of you brings joy to my life," Han lovingly said. All of his creations were precious to him, so not being able to spend time with them had always weighed heavily on him. "We are unworthy of such praise, Master," Anacalus said. My sister is correct. We only exist to humbly fulfill your wishes and desires, Alasia agreed with her older sister. How is your domain doing? Han asked the two of them. Anaclus was the first to speak. As you wished, both Alasia and I have created our minions to help us guard our floors, following the form that you had created for us. The minions that I set up are a variety of lamias. Each one was created into a different subspecies, allowing them to improve their ability to protect your realm. Master, I have created a variety of arachnias, with each with their own strengths for a variety of scenarios. With the minions that we created, Master has no need to worry about any external forces infiltrating your holy realm. Alasia finished. You have truly made me proud of the two of you. I am happy that my gift was not wasted. Han cheerfully responded. Now, the reason I have summoned you, sisters, is to find out what is special about this forest. This area should be filled with monsters, yet I have not seen a single corpse. I am currently pretending to be a student at an academy, and the class I'm attending is on an excursion through this forest. There are other students here, so I do not want you to engage them. With your abilities, you should have no problem in staying hidden. Brittany, my personal attendant, is with me, so all communications will go through her since Helania is back in the city. You will temporarily be under Brittany's command, and the both of you will coordinate with her, Han ordered the sisters. Your will is our will, they answered, accepting his command. In a flash, both sisters disappeared to fulfill his command. Han turned around and headed to where his group was resting. When he returned, both Celine and Lithia looked ready to continue forward towards the ruins. Seeing that Han had returned, the sisters got back on their feet, ready to move. Han started to walk towards where the golden orb was floating. Brittany, I have summoned both Anaclus and Rasia to investigate the forest, about the lack of monsters. They will be under your command, so make sure to coordinate with them properly, Han informed Brittany. Though she had experience with commanding maids and waitresses, this would be the first time she would be commanding those that are as powerful as the floor protectors. As the day passed by, the sisters were able to build up their stamina. This caused them not to stop as frequently, increasing their time. Now that Han has assigned the Jungle Sisters to investigate the curious nature of this forest, he felt like the trip became more relaxing and enjoyable. As the sun was starting to dim and the night sky was taken over, they went around a large tree and saw a clearing open up. In the center of the clearing were several ancient structures. Surrounding the structure, there was a broken up wall that had vines crawling all over it. Past the wall, there was a long road that looked like it had seen better days, but did well to survive for so long. Entranced by the scene, Han walked into the ruins first, going past the walls. On either side of the road, there were old buildings, with some of them entirely collapsed. There were statues of women in various poses, their bodies crumbling due to the passage of time. Looking at them, Han couldn't help but feel saddened by how distraught they all looked. He tried to picture what they looked before, which just made things harder on him. Passing by houses and temples, he imagined the streets filled with the laughter of children as their parents looked after them. Now the ruins felt like a necropolis, a ghost of its former self where the dead roamed. I wonder where everyone is, Celine wondered out loud. The ruins seemed to be as large as the city. Some of the buildings were taller than most of the buildings inside Academic City. With the sun slowly coming down, the city started to look more ominous, as if anyone within the city would be trapped forever. Han thought that those myths he learned in school, where the hero would stay inside a forbidden city for too long and become trapped inside. Even though he had nothing to worry about, Han still felt a chill run down his spine. Looking around, he willed himself to see where his classmates were located. Blue dots appeared, all bunched up together, near the center of the city. Sighing in relief, he pushed back thoughts of a haunted city out of his mind. Ever since he was a kid, he would think that there were ghosts inside the various places he lived. Though a ghost would be no match for him, Han didn't care to face any at the moment. "Let us try the center of the city," Han suggested to the rest of the group. As they approached the center of the ruins, Han could hear the sound of laughter and chatter of his classmates. Everyone had already set up their camp and were getting ready to eat dinner. People seemed to group their tents around their party members, instead of just setting up wherever they wanted to. Their experience inside the forest likely created a strong bond between them. Now they talked to one another as if they had known each other for a lifetime. "Look who finally came in! The teacher thought that she might have to go searching for you stragglers," a group of nobles mocked them. Several of the nearby groups began to laugh, thinking Han's team were a bunch of useless commoners. Many had a look of doubt regarding the uniform Han wore and whether he really was an S-ranked student. Han looked back at the sisters and saw that they were looking depressed at the reception they received. "Do not concern yourself with what others think about you. The two of you have grown during this single trip, so there is no need for you to feel embarrassed," Han tried to encourage them. Both sisters looked a little cheered up after hearing what Han said. Looking up where Ha-Yun was at, Han headed towards the teacher. He thought it would be a good idea to let the teacher know that they had safely arrived at the ruins before going off to set up their camp for the night. They found their teacher sitting by herself, in front of a campfire, cooking her meal. The smell that wafted into Han's nose left something to be desired, letting him know that their teacher wasn't going to be a typical wife if she ever got married. "Teacher, we would like to report in and let you know that we have safely completed the first task," Han informed Ha-Yun. Looking up at them, she gave a long sigh, saying, "I am glad that all of you have made it safely, though it should not have been that difficult with the lack of monsters in this forest." Her shoulders shivered slightly, thinking about the unusual circumstance. "We will be now setting up our camp and preparing our meal," Han simply said, not bothering to worry about the lack of monsters. Seeing Ha-Yun nod her head in consent, Han walked towards an open area that was relatively close to where the teacher was camped at. The sisters and Brittany followed after him. When Han stopped in an open area, the sisters began to take off their packs and start pulling out their tent. To help them get through the forest, Han had the sisters equally distribute the weight in their packs. Celine, being the older sister, had filled her pack with more equipment, which helped to contribute towards her poor stamina. Seeing the sisters get their tent ready, Han checked his side for any obstructions and waved his hand. Out of nowhere, a large elaborate tent appeared, already set up and ready to be used. The size of the tent made it look like a cabin, with modular-looking sections. The sisters watched in amazement at how fantastic Han's tent looked, even compared to the tents the nobles brought. Just the size alone looked as if 10 people could fit inside comfortably. Walking inside the tent, Han looked at the various comforts that were included in the tent. There was a cast iron stove to help keep the tent warm at night, several leather sofas for people to sit in, a dining area for him to eat at, and a large master bedroom with a massive bed inside. In another room, there was a bathing area with a large bathtub. The tub was already filled with hot water and would stay at the temperature as long as he wished it. Though they were camping inside ruins, the feeling the tent gave off was they were staying inside of a proper home. Taking a seat at the table, Han swept his hand across it and made several dishes appear. The largest course was a pot roast, surrounded by vegetables and covered in a brown gravy. A large bowl of freshly cooked rice was next to the roast. There were also various oriental side dishes. Smelling the food, Han began to get hungry, taking his utensils and started to serve himself. "Master, please, allow me to ready your dish." Brittany looked horrified and protested. "Brittany, there is no need to worry about that here. I am famished, so I will just serve myself," Han rationalized to Brittany, not wanting to wait for Brittany to go through all the usual decorum. "I must refuse. I am your personal attendant, and I cannot allow you to serve yourself like some barbarian," Brittany stubbornly stated. Seeing that Brittany had dug in her heels on the matter, Han just threw up his hands into the air and waited for Brittany to ready his meal. Though Han enjoyed being pampered by his creations, it was moments like these where he just wanted to dig into the food, like he had done on Earth. When his plate was all ready, Brittany placed it in front of him. When it looked like she was going to start feeding him, Han said, "Brittany, you also need to eat. This is a casual day, so there is no need for you to feed me. You have not eaten all day, so you need to eat something too." Part of him was being considerate towards Brittany, but another part of him wanted to just shovel the food into his mouth. Due to the time constraint, Han and Brittany weren't able to eat a decent meal due to how slow Celine and Lithia were moving. The roast beef was so tender that his fork was enough to cut into the meat. Making sure the piece was covered in the delicious gravy, he ate the morsel and moaned in delight. Han felt that the food tasted even better after they had gone through the forest all day. Moments like the current one made Han feel thankful for his powers, where he didn't need to wait for his food to be prepared and could just make it appear with the wave of his hand. Finishing his food, Han walked over to the bath. The steam rose from the water, a small fall that hovered above the water's surface. Creating a clothing rack, he removed his uniform and hung it up on it. Even though the day was mild, there were stains that littered the fabric. Picturing the uniform clean, Han watched as each of the stains slowly faded away. Once again, the uniform looked as pristine as when he first put it on. While standing fully exposed, a mirror appeared in front of Han and allowed him to see what he looked like. It had been a while since the last time he stared at himself in the mirror. Even when on Earth, Han only looked into the mirror when he was going about his morning routine, like brushing his teeth or shaving. He never thought of himself as being particularly attractive, so looking at himself never appealed to him. His brown hair was a little longer than he remembered, now covering his bushy eyebrows. Seeing his face, he stared at each part of him, such as his nose, eyes, and lips. In regards to his lips, he was often told that he looked like he was about ready to kiss someone. With his mother being of Asian descent and his father being Caucasian, he had a mixture of racial traits. This allowed him to not have the stereotypical thin lips that many Asians had. His nose was often described as bulbous, though not ugly looking. Looking at his eyes, the typical Asian eyes looked back at him. If he were to describe himself, Han wouldn't call himself ugly, but instead average. The rest of his body was not very unique, being slightly overweight, but not noticeably so. As he looked at himself, Han realized that he could make some changes to his body. Though with his power, there was no need to look more attractive or stronger, Han thought it would be a nice change of pace, like when someone gets a new hairstyle. He remembered friends making drastic changes with their hair after a traumatic event, usually with relationships. The first thing he did was slightly alter his body, make himself slightly taller. Under his skin, Han could feel the bones making rapid changes to accommodate his will. It felt like ants were crawling under his skin, making him shiver at the imagery. Occasional popping noises could be heard, and his skeletal structure made the changes needed. In his reflection, Han could see that he became taller and smiled. Being slightly shorter than everyone else was something that was always on his mind, considering how often the person's body influenced social interactions. Now that he's changed his bones, Han imagined himself with more defined muscles. Going with the bodybuilding image wasn't something that interested him. He thought a body that was toned was more visually appealing. Looking like a martial artist was what he aimed for when he was a kid. Though his power level didn't change, the feeling of stronger muscles made his body feel lighter. His body was more responsive to his movements. Jumping up and down gave him joyful pleasure. There was a difference between being infinitely strong with his powers and just naturally being strong. Moving on to his face, Han made some slight adjustments and gave himself a more appealing and symmetrical face. He remembered how beauty was very close to how symmetrical a person's face was. So he decided to make his face just below perfect symmetry. Even looking at his face, Han thought that he was what people described as being stunning and beautiful. If he were to go back to Earth, there'd be no doubt that companies would hire him to become a model. Many people would think that making oneself more aesthetically pleasing is unnecessary. He knew that people would lower their guard when facing someone that looked beautiful. No work needed to be done to win over people. This is why so many people try to improve their physical looks and have surgery done on them. With his current body looking the way he wanted it to look, Han climbed into the bath and enjoyed the warm water. His back against the tub and hands draped over the sides, he closed his eyes in bliss. Though the world may be different, there was nothing like soaking in a hot tub. While he lay in the tub, Han heard the sounds of footsteps getting closer. Without needing to open his eyes, Han knew that this was Brittany. "Join me," he simply told her, not speaking louder than was necessary to maintain his current level of relaxation. The sounds of clothing being removed could be heard, the ruffling of fabric and undoing of buttons. Clothing falling to the ground and light steps towards the bath, and finally the feeling of the water's surface being disturbed. Ripples gently hit his chest, and the level of water rose as it was being displaced. Brittany's feet could be felt against his calf, her smooth skin rubbing against his. As she lowered herself into the water, Han could feel her butt rubbing against his groin, followed by her back against his chest. Turning herself towards him, Brittany lay on her side and rested on his chest. Her head nestled just below his jaw, inserting his arm under hers and around her chest. Han enjoyed the feel of her body. With such a beauty on him, an ordinary man would be driven by sexual desire. But Han was overcome with a feeling of peace and satisfaction. A moment where everything was right about the world encapsulated him. I could just lay here with you in my arms for eternity, Han whispered into the air. If Master allowed it, I would always want to be held by you, she cooed in bliss.